But yeah, it is the birthday of a legendary hip hop producer, producer Manny Fresh, of Cash Money, and his own everything he did after leaving Cash Money. So I believe he turned 54 years old today. So like, you talk about someone being the architect of a certain region of rap. It doesn't really get more clear in that definition than Manny Fresh. Um, and also, like, from some of his like rap songs that he's on, he's just absolutely hilarious, and
Yes.
a complete unserious individual who you should not like take seriously at all, but it's pure comedy. Um, but James, talk about Manny Fresh.
Um, I remember the example I'll give is I remember one time Jeff Fisher was talking about like the Steve McNair, Eddie George era Titans that went to Super Bowl, won multiple times in a one, like made the playoffs multiple times in a row, and he mentioned you know they they say that like the passing game is keep creeping up upon us, but like I think Eddie, but like, we keep feeding Eddie George the ball, and Eddie George averages 4 yards per carry. And if you run the ball on first down, second down, and third down, that's 12 yards. That's a new set of downs. That was more or less what he said. And I would and like we talk about like some of the workhorses and running back in NFL, like Manny Fresh is one of the absolute biggest production workhorses in history of hip hop. Like for the longest, it was him. And then like about 2000 or so, 2001, Jazzy Face started pitching in. He's more like closing. Like he was helping Manny with some of the stuff, even landing like placements. But all of that stuff at the beginning from like 98 that you heard until like about 2001 was all Manny. And all those albums from like the Hot Boys albums, the Big Timers albums, Juvenile, BG, Wayne, it was him. And that has to be an exhausting task. Like think of how we have rightfully like not just us, but like a lot of people have like given their flowers to Hit Boy for the work on with him and Nas on the King's Disease series, right? Those three
Yeah.
albums, right? Manny was doing that like twice, two, three times a year. And I'm not saying like I'm not talking about there should be like what do you call it, there should like there's some type of like low management on producers these days. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that at all, but I'm just saying like he was at the forefront of so much like inspiration to come out there musically and like just complete games, and he was just awesome. And like for me, I don't know where he ranks historically for me all time. I just know he's somewhere in my top five, like somewhere around it. Like for me, Timbaland will always be my favorite producer of all time, any genre of music. And I often like flip through people after that, but like my favorite Southern rap producer of all time will always be Manny Fresh. Like I don't know what would have to change that. Unless you can say want to say, well, what about Timbaland? He's from Virginia. Yeah, but I don't really that Missy stuff isn't necessarily like stereotypically Southern, if you catch my drift. Right, like I think
Yeah.
Pimp C would have some thoughts
Some
on
misforgivings on that.
what's on like Timbaland's clock when he talks about the South.
Yeah. So like one of my most popular YouTube videos is a video where I'm actually talking about how to make a Manny Fresh style beat. Because I kind of like to consider myself a chameleon kind of at this point. Like any
Mm-hmm.
kind of style, I'll dip my toes in to see if I can figure it
Is
out.
that when you recreated Cash Money's an Army?
Yeah, I did that after. Like I did one that originally sounded like "Back That Ass Up" for the YouTube
Okay.
channel, and then you were like, "See if you can remix Cash Money as an Army," and I kind of basically just made my own knockoff version of it.
Yeah, I ain't like that shit. Like that shit felt personal. I was like, okay, he gotta try to like this. But she been down here a long time. I was like, this goddamn yank up here want to come down and act like this shit is easy. I'm I felt disrespected. Like,
But
yes, like full on Manny Fresh. I literally look. I identify with Manny Fresh in his production. Yes,
you know,
I make fun of for the wrestling fans doing their promotions. I was doing that with Manny Fresh. Yes.
yeah. But like I was talking about kind of the things that like that made up his beats, and I've kind of found myself subliminally kind of like, you know, having watched his genius breakdown of the Back That Ass Up, how he made that, and I pretty
Uh-huh.
much just kind of said, you know, stole exactly what he was talking about using the quick snappy drums and like a lot of the 808 stuff, and you know his how he uses pianos with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything sounds real clean
Yes.
for some of the stuff that I like from Manny Fresh, and it was just you know, when I was making that, I was like, man, like yeah, he was figuring all this out, and then I saw some video where he talked about it, and now like I think if Manny Fresh came along now, it would be even easier for him. But he was doing everything he was doing with 8 sounds. Now that think about like, you know, your kick drum, your snare, clap, 808. That's 4 right there.
Right.
Then your
He might.
hats or
He
any
might.
percussion, right?
Right. He might have figured out a way how to stem that all into one track. I don't know.
So he
I
was
don't
using an
know.
SP1200, and
So
he
probably not then.
yeah. So and then after that, he had like 3 or 4 sounds to play with. All that early stuff, everything in the '90s was like that.
Yeah.
Ha or freaking Bat That Ass Out. He was talking about. I was blown away, and I was like, man, I was like 8 sounds, and then I was thinking about a lot of my beats, and they're like 8, 9, maybe 10 sounds. But like the thing is, I
Yeah.
can add as much as I want after that.
Right.
He couldn't.
And that's the part that makes like creating with and depending on like the technology and the time frame you're in and the time you came up. That's what makes like that era of producers and DJs, like that DJ producer kind of thing, like that kind of like ingenuity and say I'm going to try things and like I'm going to run sets here there so I know what records work and I know how what records and formats work and I know how to format to play for parties or for clubs, and then you take that shit and then you put that in the format in your records. Like I remember, I think it was I was watching a Swiss and DJ. It was before Versus, but it was like during the pandemic. I think it was like or maybe before that. It was like some Swiss and Just Blaze like back and forth, where it was basically like a proto version of Versus,
Mm-hmm.
and they were playing records back and forth, and it was like it was a game of chess, and then all of a sudden it was like, Just Blaze plays Beyonce Freedom, and then like Swiss is like, oh, you fucked around and went into Beyonce. You got one Beyonce song, I got half an album, right? And it's interesting to think about like how that plays in a club and like that back and forth, and then like thinking about like that era of DJs mattering and mattering less, like in hip hop, as far as like going into production and going into shopping records, and then like the whole like DJ networking thing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that it's the worst thing in the world that that is kind of been weeded out, because like obviously like that was, you know,
Hard to break
it was
through.
similar to the radio stations.
Yeah.
But like the idea that these people know what works in certain regions or in certain places, or whatever else, so they can put it into their particular records that are for local artists, and and then go from there. And then like I just think like, and then like I don't want to romanticize the death of scratching and all that kind of stuff in records, but it's like that stuff's not existent now. And like it gives you it gave so much life to these records that we grew up on.
All
And so
everything coming from Trigger Man, like that comes out of New Orleans, all that shit gets sampled off of and slowed
right,
down and sped up, and everything, it just gets put the
right,
DNA that, and Manny Fresh figures like this shit out essentially, like
yeah,
between him and a couple other producers in New Orleans. But it's Manny Fresh going back to the '80s, literally.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And oh man, like he just like you mentioned, like the simplicity of how clean it sounds was. I think that's because of like, if he was been our age, he could have been overwhelmed and thrown, and we always hear about tons of producers, Brian Michael Cox or whatever, talking about like when I was younger, I used to just throw as much stuff into records as I could or whatever else. And then like he realized like that stuff's in the way. That stuff gets harder to. That stuff makes the mix muddier. That stuff like confuses like listeners to what is like the theme of the record from like a melody standpoint or the harmony standpoint. And like many, lucked in slash knew all of that stuff. And like I listened to his records in or his production stuff, and like I remember like Daria, for example, MTV. Like when they used to go in and out of records or in and out of commercial break, they would play instrumentals, and they would always seemingly play Cash Money instrumentals. And like I would always hear those instrumentals. I'd be like these are like perfect, like not even like as forced. Like the songs are great, but like just compositions of music, they sound perfect and they fit together and they sound clean and they all like it just works. And like it's almost like a Motown level like quality of like how well all that stuff fits together, almost like
Mm-hmm.
an assembly line. And like for him it had to be like that because he had to do so much shit for people. Um, and I
Got
just
plenty
think
of
that like
practice.
I kind of think it's like when we think of like the southern producers, like we think of like Paul and Juicy J and like Lil Jon and him, like in particular, like I think they kind of maybe not Manny as much, but I think that like John in especially John of those three, like never really got their due as like the kind of producers they were,
I'll
as
tell
far
you
as being
why
able
for
like they're
Manny.
doing southern stuff, but like if they were put in LA, they could have made this work. If they were put in Detroit, they could have made this work. If they were put in Chicago, they could have made this work. It's just a certain talent and an ear and the DJ stuff added to it to where they could have figured it out
And think
if they
about
put
how
them
long.
anywhere.
I think some of that goes in how long like Money essentially kept Manny Fresh segregated from everybody else. Couldn't work with nobody else. So like like and Cash Money didn't exactly like collaborate with everybody in the
Yeah,
earlier days. So
yeah. I
like
mean,
it took a long time for Manny Fresh to start like branching out. And then it was
right,
just more like, oh, he's got a bunch of songs on the radio. He's got Jeezy songs on the radio. He's got Ti songs. He's got
right,
Wayne or later Wayne stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, I asked James to make a list of his top 5 Manny Fresh beats, or his 5 favorite Manny Fresh beats, and I'm sure he was stressed out doing so. I wrote
I
5 as well.
I didn't know it was his birthday, but you asked me, and I was like, huh. And then I was like, oh no, I'm gonna like I'm not gonna be able to figure out. I'm not gonna be able to cut down, and then I'm gonna like start, and then like immediately what happened was I started thinking of records that I would put on it, like what's the honorable mention, and then I'm like, ah, shit. Now I'm at a point now where I'm gonna have to do honorable mention for like the top like you know the top 5 Wayne songs, and then like the honorable mention for that, and then top Juvenile, and I was like, why would you do this? You should have known this was gonna happen to me. So yeah, like I basically said, you know what? I'm just gonna just go with what are like the records for me that like I heard them and I was like, I wish I had made that the most. So I went. That's what I went with. You have a list too, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Can you go first?
sure. Number 5, number 1 stunner. So
That that is also on my list. Yes.
I man, I like the drums on this beat because it's the same drums that they use in the Biggie "I Got Story to Tell." I believe it is an Al Green song. It is also a Rakim song called like Mahogany. It's the same drums, but he sped them up, and then it's just like dun 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 dun. It's like superhero music almost, and a lot of great keys on there and everything else, and it just you can put that beat on and for anybody anywhere across the country and be able to rap on it. It's tight.
Yeah. So I don't have it ranked. I just have a 5, and then after that I had a space, and then like all the stuff that is like I just like I wish I put on there. But I'm just gonna say this is a record that I don't think a lot of people heard, but like this is on the Manny Fresh solo album. This was Wayne's Takeover #1. The guitar work on it is amazing. And this is at a time when like we talked about like how as a composition and the breakdowns and like I didn't mention this, but like with Manny Fresh, like his use of like live instrument players into his production, for the stuff he just could not do. To go with a sampler with whatever he had laid down. And then like the thing that also like we mentioned the DJ scratches and stuff and things, but like his ability to continuously come up with different drum rolls or whatever else to keep the song feeling fresh as opposed to like, you hear, okay, this is the intro, this is the first 8 bars, this is the last 8 bars, this is the hook, and like it kept it, like that variation like livened up the records for me, and like that was the way like a lot of his stuff for me was like I was so impressed by like how did he think of, you know, he's playing a whole record, he has all of his tracks in, and all of a sudden he's like add this snare fill here, and it's like that snare fill, that drum is not in any other part of the record except for last 2 bars of the end of the second verse, and it's like this dude is just like his thought of what he's putting into a record was just I thought was just special. So Wayne's Takeover, just incredible guitar work, live instrumentation, just and with that is like that kind of composition thought he put into those records. Like this is just Wayne just basically like I think going like 32 bars. Just there's no hook, there's no nothing. It's just like it's played off like an interlude skit where like Wayne's on the studio with the engineer Faye, and he's like telling Fee like, "Hey, wait, Mannie didn't want me on the record. They told me to come in here because they need me on it, but like Mannie said he didn't want no cussing, shooting, violence, bitches stabbing bitches, all violence, all that kind of stuff." And then like he plays as if like Mannie had just walked into the studio, so he's like, "Hey man, play something," and then he starts just going. And I like, but the production is just incredible. Like to think of what was in the era at the time, like it is like Lil Jon doing a very good damn rendition of like Rick Rubin 80s guitar tracks or whatever else, and then you hear this and it's like he's so fucking good. So yeah, check it out. Wayne's Takeover on the Mind of Mannie Fresh.
Number 4, Bling Bling. A very happy, jumpy instrumental. It's just like you have no choice but to smile because you start thinking about Bling Bling, and then like those weird kind of synths that kind of sound like what is that like and then the tempo is like I love the tempo of it, and it's real up tempo, and just another very clean sounding instrumental, and it comes and breaks down beautifully into the chorus, and I think it's just like it's another throw a beat on beat.
Yeah, I also was like, when are we ever going to hear anything like that again? Not to say like the sound is so like outrageous. It's not like listen to some like B-side Timbaland beat on a Missy album where you're just like, what the fuck is this? But it's like this sounds clean. I don't think we'll ever hear anything because we haven't heard anything like that, over 20 years since that sounds like that.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for like Shine, for example. But yeah. I guess I'm just gonna Juvenile Ha. When I first heard it on the radio, I don't know what it was. I was like, this is incredible. The hook is like the flip from what is the verse to the hook, like it just sounds incredible, and like it's almost like the mood changes too in it, and but it's incredible, and then like the bounce. And I don't think I really had ever heard like the bounce feel before, and it was just an incredible record, and that was a lock. Like number one Sunday and Howard locks for me on this thing. It had to be on there.
Number 3, Go DJ. So this is for me. This is like the hardest Mannie Fresh beat that I think I ever heard. Like where it's just like some shit is bamming and it's slower, but it's like a slower version of a put a beat on beat, and just playing with those like those kind of bell sounds, like it sounded like a video game alien type shit. Like it was like what is this like, and then like he was like real clean with the drums. Like this is another example, like and the songs that are above this also really clean with the drums, and his 808s are disgusting on this, and it's just like this is like kind of like the end of Wayne and him working together, kind of,
Yeah,
and it was like, what a better way to go out.
yeah. Like another one you could have thrown on here for honorable mention along with this would have been like Bring It Back. Like that was incredible too. Yeah, like Carter One production like is like the singles anyway is like he before we figured it out, he figured it out like if you play an 8 and he had already done this from even going back to Still Fly, like if you play the octave above like what was traditionally considered like the booming 808 where you need a system and it just crashes the the whole block, like you play it higher in different systems it sounds great. he he figured it out as early as 2001 and now everybody does. Now that's a standard. Yeah. In that way he's a genius. Number for me, Finn, like you said, like you think it's like the hardest beat. For me, when I first heard this, I thought it was Mannie's like hardest beat, where it's like the block is hot, Lil Wayne. The pizzicato strings on it, the vocal sample in the background that almost sounds like DJ Combo. Yeah, that almost sounds like DJ Combo from Killer Instinct for no fucking reason. Right. The startup of the beat, it sounds like a almost like a heartbeat, like a rhythmic heartbeat just starting up, like a revving up, and then going the drum rolls on it, like it's just an incredible beat. And like if I were a person that were to do things like rap over certain eras records for mixtape purposes, I would pick this and I would go over it. But I am not Rich Lotta, and it's not trying time travel. But I would that'd be one of the first things I go over is rap over Block is Hot.
Number 2, Back That Ass Up. Orchestral music meets
Yep.
bounce music, and like this is,
and ass was thrown.
Yes, lots of ass thrown. Manny Fresh had been building up to making this beat for 10 years. Like, it was just everything that was perfected about bounce music was in this beat. And it was like, oh, like like the Trigger Man stuff's there, the clean drums, the orchestra samples, the pianos, the tempo, the hi-hats, and the hi-hats are why it all like makes it come together. And it's just like you could picture like, motherfuckers like
Yeah, a 4-piece quartet that like that would normally be playing a wedding at the in the right place in New Orleans at the right gig would be playing this instead on the side, or maybe at the reception. Who knows? But yeah, absolutely. And to move on from you have more to say or
no, that shit's crazy. And also like that little flash that they have in the beat, it's like dun, dun, dun,
yeah, the
dun,
hit,
dun,
yeah.
dun, like
That's reverb, yeah.
Just threw that shit in there.
Mentioned, like this could be played live instrument, this could be recreated and played like T.I. Top Back. This could absolutely be played by Southern HBCU marching band. It's an anthem. I don't know how it ever happened. Like obviously this wasn't his first like work with T.I. because obviously he had the greatest from Urban Legend, but it's like the T.I. stuff was kind of like the first few times it was like, wow, he's working on someone outside of Cash Money. What's going on here? And this was their best record. And I remember like when I first heard King, like because of the build to get to the drums was so slow, I was like, okay, this sounds great, but like, what is this, an interlude? I would skip it. And then I remember Kendrick was like, James, I know you don't have any patience for records. Notice how me listening to music that also like fits with my lack of patience for like going through like slow builds or slow burns or builds for matches. Like he was like, listen to it. Like, do you know who produced that? I was like, nah, Manny did it. Oh, okay. Played it. And then doom, 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 doom. It was over. The piano is incredible. The pizzicato strings are incredible. The low synth at the bottom is incredible. The 808 is incredible. Super clean. Like it's just fantastic. It's just fantastic.
Number one, top back. Number one, top back. This was when I heard Ti was like, "Yo, I'm gonna show these niggas what to do with one of your beats." This was like, as you mentioned, he was fresh off of Cash Money, and it was like, how the fuck did they let this nigga out like with the business going bad like this? I felt like Mannie Fresh wanted to send a statement, and he sent it through Ti. Essentially, Ti, all he had to do was not fuck it up, and he fought around and gave us a classic on it too. So, but yeah, this is like the more gangster version of like bat that ass up. It was like, perfect horns, horn sample. Like you've never heard better horns on a rap song since. I don't think. Maybe like, what's up, what's happening? Maybe like shit like that. Like, but it's just like perfection, like sound perfection on these songs, and it was like the drum rolls and also how he just changed the mood on the song. It goes from triumphant to evil to like kind of like something that gets your blood pumping, and it's like all these 3 or 4 things are all happening in this same song, and it's just like this nigga's a genius. Like,
Yeah. And then like the remix is interesting because like he puts Jeezy on there, who had just, you know, a year earlier, like just had like one of the all-time classic like horn like records all time with like Trap Star.
yeah,
That's not a coincidence. Like obviously Ti and Jeezy were going to do work together. They already did, you know, but like that's not a coincidence. They say, "Hey, I need you also on this," and then you also have Young Joe on the remix. Bitches know they love the platinum. It's great like grandpa. Oh my god. One day we are going to find out when Young Joe's birthday is, and we're going to go over our favorite Young Joe bars. Because I can do that for like an hour. But
the Young
yeah,
Joe retrospective.
Yeah.
One day.
But yeah, for me, my top back was Another Lock along with Ha. The first thing I thought of was Number One Stunner. The man, like the breakdown, like going like out of like the first 4 bars or going into like the like bar 8 through whatever else when they use the mandolins, is like, why the fuck does he even know what a mandolin is or sounds like?
Yeah. Sounds like you're in a restaurant or something.
The drums, it's just it takes you on a ride, and it's just incredible. Like, I'm not saying that people don't do this now in their records, but like but Timbaland and him were like just so great at like breakdowns and like with minimal sound, seemingly, or like feeling of like not necessarily emptiness. The song sounded full or sounded like great. The sound sounded incredible. Like everything had a perfect place together, and like it gave room for everything to breathe, and it didn't feel like over the top of each other. It was awesome. Yeah, man. Number One Son had to be on here for me.
Happy birthday, Mannie Fresh.